It's a classic staple that's getting harder to find and pricier by the day from a distillery that gets all the hype. The question is it really the quintessential bourbon? Today we're taking a look at Buffalo Trace Bourbon. So let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So that's right, we're taking a look at Buffalo Trace Bourbon. For many people, this is sort of a staple in their bar. It is something that's just classic, quintessential bourbon, great house bourbon to offer to basically anybody, the bourbon lover all the way down to somebody just getting into the world of whiskey. Now, of course, the thing is, with it being a Buffalo Trace product, obviously by the name Buffalo Trace, that distillery is super hyped up. Almost everything they have is harder to find and pretty allocated, and priced up when you can find it oftentimes. So the question remains, how good is Buffalo Trace Bourbon, just their regular, flagship product? Is it something that is worth all the hype? And as their flagship product, this is a good indicator of what all their other products have to offer, and is it something that you're going to enjoy enough to go out and hunt everything else that they have at Buffalo Trace? All right, so what is the overview of Buffalo Trace Bourbon? This is a 90 proof bourbon, so 45% alcohol. The mash bill, like all mash bills at Buffalo Trace, is undisclosed, though this is thought to be the #1 mash bill, which a lot of people say is something like 75% corn, 10 or less % rye, and like 15% malted barley. Age-wise, there is no age statement on the bottle itself, but this is thought to be between 8 and 10 years old, and Buffalo Trace has stated that it is that. So really good age, and price-wise, it's supposed to be around $23 to $30. I've seen it as high as 40, 45, because it's getting harder to find, but that's where its MSRP is. That's where its sweet spot is, right around 30 bucks. So let's get into the nose, palate, and finish and evaluate what is supposed to be the quintessential bourbon. Before we do that, just want to say that if you're liking all the content coming out of the channel, smash that subscribe button, hit the like button on this video. Really helps me know how to keep creating content specifically that is good for you guys. All right, let's get into the nose, palate, and finish here on Buffalo Trace Bourbon. On the nose, so very sweet and pleasant. Good honey notes, decent brown sugar, maybe a little bit like floral and honey, sort of tea-like, but then some good spice and oak kind of sitting underneath that. It's not like a super powerful nose, and I would say the most I get is this like honey, light fruity note. Trying to place my finger on what kind of fruits that is. It's definitely like lighter fruits, maybe a grape note. A lot of people get a grape note on Buffalo Trace products, especially the mash bill #1, and I do tend to get that every once in a while on this. So pleasant, sweet, not super powerful, but for a 90 proofer, showing a good amount of depth for sure on the nose. All right, let's get into the palate, everybody. Cheers. Okay, it's a really sweet and pleasant, just like the nose was. That carries over to the palate. I got a good amount of grape, apple, and cherry as fruits sort of sitting at the center of it all, which is a really nice experience. Wrapped around that is a good vanilla and honey. So very sweet, lots of honey now on the finish that's coming back up as I'm talking. Honey is sort of a big note for this bourbon. Good vanilla, not too much caramel and brown sugar shining through on that first sip. We'll see if that comes out more as it opens up. But grape, cherry, a little bit of apple, honey, vanilla, and then there is toward the back like a good oak and barrel spice note that comes through. We're gonna go back in now, second sip, see what else we can pick apart here on Buffalo Trace. Cheers, everybody. Okay, so pretty much a similar experience throughout for that sip. I will say I don't think it has a very stellar mouthfeel. It's kind of thinner on the thinner side. I mean, that makes sense for a 90 proofer, but Earlier today, I was tasting a couple of barrel proof stuff, so that might be affecting this today. Just the feeling in the mouth and the intensity. It's a more pleasant and relaxed experience than it is intense, which is, what it's meant to be. It's meant to be an easy sipper. But again, I got that like cherry, grape, maybe like the sweetness of a red apple, and some honey and vanilla, and oaky barrel spice. I'm not getting a lot of brown sugar today on this. I have gotten big brown sugar notes on this before, but today I think the fruitiness is really shining through on this, which is pleasant overall. Okay, so let's go back in one more time, evaluate the finish in particular, and see how long that lasts here for Buffalo Trace. Yeah, on the nose, I'm getting a little bit more brown sugar now, a little bit more of like a darker caramel, but all that fruitiness is staying true. All right, cheers everybody. Okay, so that sip, and focusing on the finish, I got more of the brown sugar and oak, especially thinking about like the latter third of the experience. There's a lot more oak, good sort of brown sugar, and that cherry note is lingering with some vanilla. So it starts off this like fruity, light, delicate, and then it goes a little bit darker with some oak and maybe even a touch of like caramel there. And then it transitions into this like longer cherry, vanilla, oak finish. So you can see why people call it sort of the quintessential bourbon. It really does display so much of what makes bourbon interesting and delicious. It's got good fruitiness, red fruitiness, and even like a little bit of a grape note, which is kind of unique to Buffalo Trace. Then it's got good honey, good vanilla, touch of caramel and brown sugar, and good oak and barrel spice. It's not intense. Again, that barrel spice, it's not like you're sitting there like, whoa, you just got a big Kentucky hug. In fact, there's not much of a hug at all, but it is there, it's present, and for most people, whether you're super into bourbon or just getting into it, you're gonna appreciate the depth and complexity that this supposed to be $30 bottle 90 proof whiskey is offering. All right, so what are my overall thoughts on Buffalo Trace bourbon? It's very good. It's very solid. I see why people see it as the quintessential bourbon. I see why people keep it as their house bourbon and share with most people who come over. I think it belongs right at the $30 to $35 price point. I wouldn't pay 40 bucks or more for it. I think that it's sort of thinner on the mouth, but it's approachable and delicate and has a good array of flavors and depth that display so much of what bourbon can do. What I really hope doesn't happen is that this continues to climb in price and Buffalo Trace products continue to become harder to find, and so much so that their staple product goes above 40 bucks and things like that. I really think it's a powerhouse in that $30 range, and it knows exactly what it is, and it's such a great display of age and depth that it would be sad to see this become less and less findable and more pricey. So I know that Buffalo Trace has expanded their capacity, and in future years, hopefully their things won't be quite so hard to find. This is pretty much one of the more findable things, and it's harder and harder to see these days. So if you're out there looking for Buffalo Trace, I'd say keep up the hunt. It's definitely worth trying to find a bottle. I'd pay 35 bucks for it, but not much more. And if you're looking to get more into Buffalo Trace and test out this mash bill #1, which develops into things like Eagle Rare and Stag Junior, certainly if you can find Buffalo Trace, buy it and try it so that you can know what the rest of Buffalo Trace has to offer. Last but not least, yes, I would say Buffalo Trace is hutch-worthy. 1, great sort of collector's item. 2, it is the quintessential bourbon in my head. It's what I would offer to people if they're like, can you show me something that is just central to what bourbon is and tells me what I need to know about what bourbon can offer me? This is kind of where I would turn for them. So it deserves the hype that it gets. Maybe not all of the hype, but it deserves its prominent and well-earned place in the world of whiskey. All right, I think that about wraps up everything I have to say about Buffalo Trace bourbon. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Buffalo Trace. What do you think about it becoming harder to find? How much would you pay for it? All that stuff. Love going back and forth with you guys. So until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.